everyone. I am just folding the kids' clothes right now because I just have so much to do. But I did want to make a video about something. I've been meaning to do this for a while, but I just had so much other stuff going on, and I wanted to make a video on my breastfeeding experience with Evelyn, my daughter. So she is 15 months old now, so this is like obviously a long time ago, the experience I had, and I guess I should call it my lack of breastfeeding experience because it didn't last for very long. And I wanted to share this for like first time moms so that they can know like kind of what to do and like ways to avoid the problems that I had with her. And things are going much differently with Josiah, but I still wanted to get this out there, and then I will make one about what's going on with Josiah as well, but that'll be a little later. So first of all, Evelyn, I felt like I was very prepared for breastfeeding with Evelyn because I read the breastfeeding books, and I actually like took a class at the hospital for breastfeeding her, and it was a really good class. Like it hit on everything, like how to get them to latch well, what to do to like increase supply, and you know, all that good stuff, and you know, like about the wet and dirty diapers and how many they should have, and just, I mean, it was a really good class. And it also told about like how to avoid nipple confusion, and if you did have to supplement, what to do so that you could still go back to breastfeeding, and all kinds of wonderful stuff. And I felt so prepared, like there was no way I could go wrong with breastfeeding her. And in the end, actually not even in the end, like it did not last long at all, and I ended up going straight to formula. So let me just begin with, we had a routine hospital birth with Evelyn, and it began with an induction. So I strongly believe that my body was nowhere near ready. I was completely closed when the induction started. It took me 2.5 days to get 1 centimeter, and then they just went ahead and broke my water, and I had her soon after that. But obviously if it takes you 2.5 days to get to 1 centimeter, your body isn't ready. So so that's kind of how, where we went wrong, like to begin with, was that I was induced. And then after I had her in the hospital, we did really good, and we were able to breastfeed her right away, and we didn't have any problems with that. And I think that she latched really well, and I even had like a lactation consultant come in and tell me that she was doing really good, like her latch was good and everything, and all of that. So I thought things were good. But a problem that occurred at the hospital, which, oh my goodness, looking back, I was just so dumb. But I was a first-time mom, and I just did what I thought I had to do. Like, I didn't know that I could tell a nurse no, or that, you know, or anything like that. So one thing that happened in the hospital that messed up our breastfeeding experience, I believe, is that they took her away way too often. Like, they were coming in. We were in the hospital for 2 days, and they would come in all the time and just be like, okay, we're taking her out for this. And they did it a couple times, and it was like I knew I needed to feed her, and they would say, well, we'll bring her right back. And then they would have her for like 2 hours, and I know she was hungry. I know she wanted to feed, but they would just have her forever. And like towards the end, I was even like, okay, she needs to eat. And they would be like, well, we're only gonna have her for 15 minutes. And I said, okay. And then they would still have her for like 2 or 3 hours. So in those first couple days, you're supposed to be breastfeeding like at least every 2 hours, and typically more often than that, so you can get your supply to come in. And I wasn't, because they kept taking her from me. And also, in that time, I would not be surprised, and I don't know for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if they gave her a bottle. And the reason why is because she came back a couple times after I knew she needed to eat. Like, it had been almost 2 hours since she had eaten, and then they took her for 2 hours. So I knew she would be hungry, and she wouldn't act hungry at all. And then when we got discharged from the hospital, her birth weight was 8 pounds, 2 ounces. And when we got discharged from the hospital, she was 7 pounds and 12 ounces, which all babies lose a little weight, and that was not actually very much weight for her to lose. But I had not been breastfeeding her very much at all, and my milk had not come in. So I feel like she probably would have lost more than that. And I could be wrong, but I am suspicious that they gave her a bottle. But even if they didn't, the fact that they kept taking her away and I was not able to feed her often is a problem. And then we had some latching problems after that. And I, once again, believe that that's part of it. So then, I was in a lot of pain and I was really, really sore. And nobody told me that, like, you get that sore and then after that it goes away. Because I was told, actually, that if they latched correctly, you would not get sore. And that's not true. If they latch incorrectly, that's going to make you pretty sore. But in the beginning, if you've never breastfed before, and even if you have, you're going to get sore if you haven't been breastfeeding for very long. And it will go away in time if they're latching correctly, but you're going to get sore regardless. And no one told me that. I was told if they latched right, you're not going to get sore. And so I thought I was doing something wrong. But the first few days at home, I had a lot of people over, and it made it very difficult. And I was a first-time mom, so I was very shy. Like, I didn't want to breastfeed in front of anybody. Like, even if I covered up, I just would rather go in the other room. And so, and people were there the whole time. So it made it very hard and uncomfortable for me to breastfeed. And then, like, they were so excited. My family was so excited to see Evelyn. And I just really didn't get the privacy that I needed right away. And I didn't get a lot of bonding time with her because so many people were taking her away. And I feel like Evelyn, I feel like I was not comfortable with even having Evelyn, and because everyone else always had her other than when I was feeding her. And when I was feeding her was the only time I had her, which, and that was painful the first few days. So it was uncomfortable for both of us, because babies can sense how you're feeling, and when the only time I had her I was in pain, caused some problems. Anyways, but I did feel like she was latching right, and I did think she was okay and everything, so I was happy. And then on the 4th day, I still hadn't got my milk in. I didn't get my milk until the morning of the 4th day. And on that morning, I got my milk in, and she latched, and then, like, I knew my milk came in because there was, like, milk running down her face when she unlatched. And so I was happy about it, and that was when her first doctor appointment was. So, sorry. So we went, backtracking. I am so, like, off topic, but that morning, we actually, somebody called me from the hospital to see how breastfeeding was going. And, I told them it was going good, and I didn't think I had any questions. And they asked about her wet and poopy diapers, which at the time she had not had any poopy diapers other than that first, like, she pooped like 6 or 7 times in the hospital those first 2 days. But it was the tar poopy, like, not a breastfed poopy. And so anyways, they asked about that, and I said, she hadn't had any, and they were like, well, do you hear her gulping? And I did, and you know, and they were like, well, it's probably fine. She probably just hasn't had a chance to poop yet. And, you know, you'll see what your doctor said and see what your doctor has to say about it. So I did. And, we went to the doctor. It was day 4, and my milk had just came in, and it was the very first, like, I had only gotten to feed her one time since I actually had milk. And they said, you know, they don't want your babies to lose more than 10% of their birth weight. So she was 8'2" when she was born, and they didn't want her to lose more than, or they wanted her to be 7 pounds, 5 ounces or bigger. And when they weighed her, she was 7 pounds and 4 ounces, and my heart sank. Like, I instantly knew they weren't going to be happy with me. And I already, like, started getting emotional and started to cry because I wanted to breastfeed her so bad. And, like, in my class, I had learned all about supplementing and, like, how it can make things really hard on you and whatnot. And so when they said that, I already, like, was so upset. And then that was just, like, the nurse that weighed her. And then what I found out later, which anyone who, like, anybody basically, almost anyone who goes to a hospital is going to be on IV fluids. And most people, like, a lot of girls get epidurals. So if you are someone who does that, keep this in mind if you plan on breastfeeding, because if you're on IV fluids, it adds water weight to your baby when they're born. So Evelyn was 8 pounds and 2 ounces, but I was on fluids with her and I had an epidural. So in reality, she was probably only like 7'15", because it adds some ounces. And had I known that, I could have argued my case to the doctor, but at the time I didn't know. So that is something else to take into consideration. So, with that being said, they said she'd lost too much weight, and basically the doctor put it to me like this way. She said, if you don't supplement, your baby isn't getting enough, and you need to start giving her formula. And if you don't, and she comes back in 2 days and hasn't gained what we think is a good amount of weight, then we will send you both back to the hospital and have her readmitted in the hospital. Well, this was my first baby, and, like, basically they told me I was starving my kid and I had to give formula. And I was so upset, and Steven was gone in his tech school and was not around. I had, like, no real support. My grandma was with me, and she was like, I don't know why you want to breastfeed anyway, and stuff like that, because she had a bad experience. And anyways, back to the point. I was a first-time mom, and the doctor basically acted like I didn't have a choice. And so I didn't think I had a choice. And I supplemented. And they also gave me, like, 6 cans of formula. Similac formula. And so, looking back, I wonder if they had some kind of deal with the Similac company. But anyways, so I went home, and at first I didn't listen, because I knew, like, my milk had just came in, and I knew also during that appointment they kept me there forever, because then she freaked out and said she thought she might be jaundiced, which she wasn't. But they kept us there for like 4 hours where I wasn't allowed to feed her. So once again, another problem. And had I gotten to feed her, like, right then, she probably would have gained that 1 ounce they were freaking out about. So then we went home, and I didn't listen at first because my mommy instincts told me that everything was fine and I should just, like, move on. And then that night, or it might have been on day 5, she was crying and acting upset, and I just felt like maybe she is hungry, maybe she's not getting enough. And I had an appointment on day 6. They wanted me to come back on that day to get her weighed, and they said that if she didn't gain enough, they would send us both back to the hospital. They wanted her to gain 2 ounces in 2 days. So that night I thought, fine, you know, I'll give her some formula, I'll give her a bottle, because she I don't want her to go to the hospital. And so I did, and it was a big mistake because she was only 5 days old, and a lot of people think that nipple confusion is rare, and maybe it is rare, but it happened to my daughter. And after that, like, after I gave her the bottle, then the next time I tried to feed her from the boob, she latched but was pinching me really, really hard, like unbearable. And I was already, my nipples were already sore just from being a first time mom breastfeeding. And then she was pinching, and it was horrible. And then I gave her one more bottle the next morning, like right before that her appointment where they wanted to check her weight. And then after that, she just absolutely refused to breastfeed. Like, she would not take my boob for anything. And so I pumped for a little longer, and eventually, like, pumping got to be too much, and we quit breastfeeding altogether. Now, looking back, I am stronger now and smarter now, and I know that I should have trusted my mom instincts and, like, just went with it, and she would have been fine. And I knew that if I gave her a bottle, she would probably get confused. And I did it anyway because I was basically scared into it. And so, for first-time moms or first-time breastfeeders out there, I just wanted to give a little advice based on that experience to have successful breastfeeding. And, you know, maybe you can't do everything that I'm gonna advise, and that's okay, but even, like, I just think a lot of things got in the way for us, and had I even fixed maybe one or two of these things, we probably would have had a better experience. So here's what I'm going to advise. First of all, let yourself go into labor naturally. Do not get induced. When you go into labor naturally, it sends a hormone that tells your body to start trying to produce milk. If you are induced, that's a synthetic hormone. It's not the natural oxytocin hormone, and it doesn't make your body produce milk, and your body doesn't realize you have a baby until after you have the baby. Whereas when you do it the other way, your body knows you're about to have a baby and starts working on that a little sooner. So part of my problem was, I think, that I didn't produce milk until day 4. So, go into labor naturally. I think that'll help. Secondly, try to do it with no drugs. I know that's hard, but, you know, the epidural is, like, they say it's safe, and it is fairly safe, but it does get into your baby's system, and it does make them more sleepy. And if they're more sleepy, they're not going to be as alert to breastfeed. So, that's another thing. And the next thing I would say is breastfeed as soon as you can after you have your baby, because they are more alert as soon as they have been born, and that will help them and they remember it. So if you can breastfeed like as soon as possible, then that should also help. And the next thing is keep your baby with you in the hospital, and like if they have to take your baby, send your partner with them or something, and make sure they do what they need to do and bring them right back, because they were taking Evelyn and like just putting her in a line of babies and just getting to her when they got to her. So she was gone for 2 or 3 hours and they only needed her for 10 minutes. So, you know, make sure they're not keeping your baby, and they can do most of those things in the room that they have done, or you can choose not to have any of it done. So that's another thing. And the next thing that I was going to recommend is no pacifiers and no bottles until breastfeeding is very well established. And I would say for it to be very well established, probably at least a week of breastfeeding, maybe more, just depending on your baby, and for you to start being comfortable with it too and not be as sore and stuff too. And I think that will help. And then past that, like, trust your mom instincts. Babies lose weight, and that's okay. And, you know, looking back, I wish I would have just kept doing what I was doing for those 2 more days and seen what would have happened at that appointment. Because I think since my milk came in, like, it would have been fine had I went to that appointment. And if I would have just waited a little bit longer and they would have left me alone. But I caved because they scared me. And that's the last thing, and probably the most important thing that I'm going to say, and that is stick up for yourself and for your baby. If you don't want to supplement, you don't have to. And, you know, your baby's not going to starve to death. And, I mean, not just within the first few days. And if you really do have a supply issue, try other things first, because there's plenty of things to help your supply. And, you know, you don't have to do that right away. And just, like, you know, stand up for yourself. If your doctor is trying to bully you into formula feeding, say no. Or take it and smile, nod your head, and go home and don't listen. Do what you want, because it's your kid. And, you know, doctors are good for a lot of things, but they also have their own time schedule and their own agenda. And so if it seems to you like they don't have your best interest at heart, or your baby's best interest in heart, then they probably don't. And that's just how I feel. And I know there's some situations that are different, but I think our breastfeeding experience would have lasted a lot longer and been a lot better had I just been a little stronger and had a little more support. And, you know, had I stuck up for myself, and not just with the doctor, even at home, just sticking up for myself and being like, no, I'm going to hold my baby because I need her to bond with me. Or, no, you guys can leave because I'm going to feed my baby and I'm allowed to do that. And you guys don't have to be here, you know, or whatever. And, yeah, so that's pretty much it. And so that was my breastfeeding experience with Evelyn, and how I think it could be better and maybe go better for you guys as well. And thank you for watching. Leave your comments below, and I'll see you in my next vlog. Bye!